Hey Kevin, how are you?
Oh,
we're live.
Thank you.
We're live on the internets.
Good Lord.
Now, I have to do my thing here again, so I'll do a quick introduction, which we'll have to do again anyway, because no one knows we're live. Welcome to Broadsheet on the Telly on Thursday, the 7th of May in 2020. On the panel tonight, we have all the way from sunny San Jose, we've got Derek O'Donoghue.
Hi, everybody.
He was back in Carlow. All the way from sunny Crumlin, Walkinstown, Crumlin, Vanessa Foran.
Dublin 12, the village.
All the way from sunny Portugal, we've got Luke Brennan. And Kevin, I don't fucking never looked where you were. Oh, hang on a sec, I remember now. All the way from County Laois, the finest part of the country, we've got Kevin Higgins.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, how's everyone doing?
We're good. How are you? Are you in a sauna? You're coming to us from a sauna.
Oh, I'm in the sauna. I'm hardcore though. I keep me clothes on in the sauna. That's how I operate.
I'm admiring all your haircuts, by the way.
I don't think you're in the sauna. I think you're actually just like sitting on a wall. I think that there are floorboards behind you. I think, Neil.
That's it. I'm actually lying on the floor. Yeah. I'm lying on the floor.
Dancing on the ceiling. Well, I'm in my.
I came as Albert.
What was that, Kevin?
I came as Albert Trotter.
Granddad.
Going the wall.
Or Uncle Albert. Which one are you, Granddad or Uncle Albert?
I'm Uncle Albert. You know me, son. I'm saying nothing.
I came as Dr. Bricks.
Pardon?
Dr. Bricks, you know, in the White House press briefing room.
Oh, right.
He wears a scarf now. I wouldn't have noticed, only that our friend from San Francisco mentioned about the scarves, and I was watching Gogglebox last night, and they were showing the clip about when President Trump was talking about disinfecting Dettol into your veins, and you'll be cured for life of everything. And she's there trying to hide it under her scarf. She's there kind of trying to make it all go away. And I saw this upstairs in the knicker drawer, and I said, you know what? The poor girl, and it's hard to know, like, if it was my boss standing there, like, would I have gone up and said, would you ever stop it? Come back, sit down on that. You know, anyway, I'm taking it off now, folks.
I'm not the most fashionable person in the world, so nobody should take fashion advice from me. But I just think the scarf is ridiculous, you know. I just don't understand. I don't get it. I don't think it does anything for anybody. So.
Derek, to be fair, at least the colours of your jersey are matching the colours of the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, that's been
very tastily done. Yeah.
Nice. Shame about that.
Oh, have you're not coming from your basement then? Are you coming from somewhere more exotic, Derek?
No, I'm coming from the garage. Just garage. I just changed the background.
Oh yeah, very good.
I played around with the settings and tried to figure something out. So there you go.
And Luke, you've no background? I thought now you would have, with your artistic temperament, would have painted a mural or something.
No, I do have a painting behind me. I did a Porto. Do you want to see that?
Yeah. Because you know I have such an artistic temperament and I have a great patience for it. Oh, that's lovely.
Like that?
Oh,
very
yeah.
nice.
We've seen that bridge before. You're quite attracted to that bridge.
Well, there's one main bridge that's just very lovely down the middle of Porto, and it's it's just, you get a great view of the whole city. Porto is like sort of set over 6 bridges, and this is kind of the one that's in the middle, so you can see 2 of them one side and 3 the other. One is hidden, so you sort of get to see the whole town, and it's pretty jaw-droppingly beautiful. So I'm lucky enough to be able to get out for a bit of a run every now and again, and I make a point of going over the bridge as well, so I get to enjoy it, and there's not a day that it doesn't blow my mind a little bit. It's just so beautiful.
And come here, do they dive off the bridge or anything? Jumping off the bridge?
There's actually 2 layers to it. There's a sort of lower layer that's, you know, cars and pedestrians, and then the top layer is trams and pedestrians. The lower layer is maybe, I'd say it's probably 100 feet or something like that, or maybe less, maybe 40 feet, but it's quite high. And people, the young scallywags dress up in their wetsuits, and they jump in off there. And but there's quite a current. People have lost lives jumping in there, so it's the diving probably isn't the difficult bit. It's like knowing the currents and knowing where to get out afterwards. But if they're standing there looking for €2 off everyone to dive in. So that's their summer gig, for the the young lads. So
and where Kevin is in Leash, then you have a flyover.
Can I just ask everybody, just because I've not done this in quite a while, what was everybody's standout Irish news story of the week?
Oh, Jesus.
Probably the COVID. You heard about the COVID crisis?
I actually think a big issue from Ireland is the Leaving Cert and what's happening with that, or what's not happening. As in,
well, you were obviously a SWAT now. You were obviously a real fucking points chaser.
I'm a school teacher by trade,
Okay.
So I have a big concern for all the students and the stress that they're under at the moment, and like wondering what's going to happen with them for next year.
The Leaving Cert's cancelled now, Derek. You know that was just confirmed in the last
Jesus,
hour.
why didn't that happen now when I was going through?
In the last hour, because the last I heard was no decision made. We had a meeting yesterday and they hadn't made a decision, but they've just cancelled it, have they?
About an hour ago, it was announced it was cancelled, and they'll be doing the predicted grades thing.
Well,
predicted grades.
My teenager is going into 5th year in September, and she reckons that we were talking about this earlier, and I was saying the predictive grade would have completely shafted me. By the way, I was a lastminute.com person, getting it all in the night before, but I was a great one for just reading exam questions and not even reading the questions, just reading the answers and reading the answers. But she reckons that the predictive grades would suit her brilliantly if they'd taken the mock and the run up to it, and then they go one up from that, the next jump, which is like in my time, it's like in the old money days of just A, B, C, and D. It's a half a grade kind of, they go from a minus to a plus or whatever, So she said it would actually suit her, but she would if she was doing the Leaving Cert now based on, say, her last set of grades, she would be guaranteed what she wants to do.
I think it should go over like the school history. So look back at the report cards from first year all the way through, and try and figure out some sort of average between first year, second year, junior cert, fifth year, and so on. Like, so you have a wide perspective of what students actually done over those years. Now, I understand the difficulties that, different schools have different standards, and I know as a teacher, sometimes for a summer report, you would try and give somebody extra marks as a way of trying to encourage them. If they were coming in around 37 or 38, you might try and find a few extra marks to get them over the 40, so at least they would have a pass. Because I think students, when they think they can do something, they will try harder, whereas if they think they're failing at something. So I think a lot of teachers might have, tried to. I think using the predictive grades, people will end up with higher marks, which will lead to higher points for most courses. So I think what needs to happen as well is the universities need to be a little bit more flexible. They need to try and increase the number of places available for all their courses, so that maybe to try and reduce that points pressure. If you could try and, like, instead of, I don't know how many places are available for medicine, let's say there's 400 places available for medicine, well, let's bring it up to 600, and let's try and keep the points down in that regard. So same for law, or same for commerce, whatever like that. Because I think in Ireland there's this big obsession with points, and people think if I get 570 points, then I'm smarter than you who only got 540, and that's all rubbish. I think anybody who gets like, if you're coming out with like, 6 or 7 honours and honours papers, you're well able to do any course that's available in college. I mean, if you get like, say, 6 Bs in the way it used to be, and you get like 420 points, 6 Bs in higher level subjects, you're a smart kid and you're a hard worker, and you would be able to survive in any course in college. But in Ireland, we have this notion that somebody that gets 575 points is somehow way smarter than somebody who only gets 500. And that's not the case. It just means that on that particular day or in 1 or 2 particular exams, they happen to get better marks in one question. But in terms of being able to handle a high point college course, like anybody who's coming in at 360, 400 points would be able to handle any course in college. So I think there's an onus on the colleges here, right? If we're doing predicted grades, let's err on the side of caution. Let's try and take people into college who are maybe like, lower points than normal, right? So, if somebody's getting into medicine this year with 480 points, well, let's give them the shot, right? So you don't want people missing out on a predicted grade, that they get 480 points in the predicted grade, and they could have got 520 on the real thing. There needs to be flexibility. College admission needs to be more flexible. Now,
that's not going to change here, though. In fairness,
I know. I'm having a conversation a little bit, but just let me have 1 more minute.
Oh no, I don't mean to work away in it. You're the learned person in this area, but I don't think the point system and the exam structure is ever going to change. And I've had this conversation with other parents, and having gone through the professional exams myself, and I was a corrector at a chartered level myself. And it's the only way to truly test people. It does separate people out. The other thing is that I don't think it's ever going to change in Ireland. And I do think this year, as in the admissions year 2020, I actually think the points will be lower because there won't be spaces set aside for the fee-paying students from outside the EU. Just saying.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin's a UCD man there now. I'd have no gra for any of the Dublin schools, but he'd know all about that now. Is anyone listening to me?
I think the issue of competitive areas like medicine, I think a predictive mark will be very problematic, because whereas it would be eminently sensible to create the number of places, they might do that for pre-med. Excuse me. They're still going to cull them savagely down to the number of places available then in the teaching hospitals. So it just means that people might, if they do take in more into pre-med, it would mean that people's disappointment would probably be delayed by a year or maybe 2, because by the time you go into the practical stuff, the teaching hospitals don't have the staff, the number of consultants to actually do their own work and to do the teaching at the same time. So, I mean, obviously it would be wonderful if that changed, but it's not going to. And I think inevitably you're going to see litigation. I think inevitably.
Yeah, I can see litigation.
Well, that's why I was suggesting that, like, they try and reduce the requirements to get in, like reduce the number of points, because look, I'm a big fan of like the getting into college system in Ireland, in that you're just a number and like you live and die by your score, because it's fair. It doesn't matter who your father is or who your man plays golf with. You live and die by your own performance. And in my experience, the vast majority of students, they get what they put into it. The people who work hard get the grades. You have some people who are very bright and they're able to do a little bit of cramming and pull out a good score. but it's very seldom you get a really strong student who doesn't perform in their exam, unless it's something like some tragedy happens, there's an accident, or they're very sick, or somebody's sick belonging to them. So I think in general the system is fair. My problem with the system is that there's the elitism in that there's this chase for high points because there is a supply and demand. There's a scarcity of places on these courses. I think open up the number of places on the courses. I think way more students are able for the high points courses. They are.
But do you
I
know
think
what?
You were saying about the chartered accountants and stuff like that. There's plenty of people now who didn't get grades for, say, commerce and UCD, right?
Well, I didn't get the points for commerce. I was short 1 point for commerce.
And so, but then they can go on to excel in their careers.
It's no barrier. The point system is no barrier unless you're doing med, okay, or an expensive course. You could go into med by doing science or nursing and then do it as a postgrad. But I mean, you have to be prepared to fund 200 grand of fees as a postgrad, right? But it can be done. If you want to do it, it can be done. And there's other opportunities for courses like med, dent, veterinary, dentistry. I've been trying to drill the teenager to do dentistry all her life, but I've lost that battle. But you see, if you want to expand the number of courses the number of places available in these sexier courses at undergrad level, you probably have to look at reintroducing fees. And I personally wouldn't have a problem with that. I don't think fees were outrageously expensive here when myself and Kevin went through anyway. Like they weren't mad, weren't they really? We look back now and we say, Jesus, they really weren't bad. Maybe it's the time to relook at how we fund our universities to make it more available. Because like if you think, if you're saying somebody gets med first time out and they go to UCC or UCD for med and they graduate with a medical degree, they'll have got out of it for under 20,000 in terms of fees.
Yeah.
You back in the day, the very last year Trinity charged fees. I remember helping somebody they were doing their tax return, I think, and he paid the fees for the youngest lad, and he got out of it was a 4-year course in Trinity then, a law degree, and he got out of it for just under £14,000. That's not a bad investment. £14,000 for a Trinity law degree back in the day. So I think we need to have a look at that. That's a wider conversation. But you see, you mentioned elitism. Sorry, Luke, but you mentioned elitism there, Derek, right? And you see, the elitism is in how you get these students the skills and the learning and the access to the exam technique, because exams at that level is all about technique, by the way. It's not so much about learning, it's about exam technique, certainly at professional level. And you need, it's actually, the elitism is in the learning up to the point to get them the points. Once they get the points and they go into the course, they are on their own. There is no, unless they're prepared to pay tutors for private lessons and grinds. And let's be honest with you, the only people given sidelines in colleges are 4th or 5th year students.
Yeah, I suppose the reason I was talking about was the idea. There's this notion that, like, if I get 500 points, I'm like, I'm.
I know you're nowhere with 500 points, Derek. It's 600 points you need.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. I agree with you. Like, that's what I mean by the elitism. Like, the elitism is the access to these, prestigious courses.
And and I'm a bit mortified here because did you see the meme about the schools, the fox is singing, what school did you go to? What school did you go to? And he goes to all the Dublin schools, Black Rock, and there's a little kind of cartoon about, did any of you see that?
No.
Oh, gosh. Well, anyway, I have a teenager and she's she's leaving one of the schools in the song. She's going into another school in the song. And of course, she did ring for 6th class. And I was like, Jesus, you've the hat trick, girl. You won't be able to show your face anywhere outside Dublin. But look, it is about up to that point. There is an elitism. And we had this on the show before. Do you remember, lads? Well, maybe you didn't. Maybe I was dreaming it. But in Dublin, I personally found, when I was picking schools for herself, like, I found under awful pressure. I did find myself pressurized just by other people about what school she should go to. I've never felt that in Cork.
And that's a major thing here. When I was growing up, I went to my local national school. I went to my local community school, and very good. My wife, very same. She went to the local national school, the nearest community school, and we are very good. Loved it. I got into UCD, got a master's from Trinity. So.
You have to say Trinity. See that now? Look, you see, you took the soup all right, Derek. You have to say, I got my master's in Trinity.
Well, I didn't drop my O. Do you know what I mean? I still have O.
And did you convert back to Catholicism then, or are you still?
Oh no, he had to tell us he went to Trinity.
He's a baptized atheist, confirmed.
Yeah, but Luke, you went to Carlow IT. Did I remember you?
That's right. Yeah.
You blew it up or something. Some chemistry. Oh, was that at school?
I did chemistry. Yeah. Just to say, like, I think that the point that was made about broadening things up is a good one. I think people like, there's a lot of emphasis on I think there's more emphasis on the leaving certain points than there should be, and I think particularly I think there's a lot of people that are sort of at a stage where they need to mature, really, and it's not really, they're not fairly reflecting. I'm taking myself as an example of someone who was particularly immature as an 18-year-old and unable to really apply myself in any sort of serious way. And I mean, you get on with life and you find a way to do this or that, but at the same time, I'm sure there's a lot of people that sort of, could do good things, but sort of they're hit with a brick wall because not so much they don't have the ability, but they maybe don't have the maturity. And I think, moving away from a point system allows for that freedom, and allows people sort of who maybe have the ability, but not the sort of the ability to knuckle down at 18 or 17 even sometimes. I think that makes sense. It's probably something good that will come from this.
Yeah, but Luke, can I just say there in the whole, I think kids are groomed very young as to within this Dublin school scene, what they're going to be doing or what they want to do. I think it starts very young. Yeah.
Well, I was just talking generally about people going to school. I wasn't talking particularly about Dublin or anything like that,
And the transition year thing now, I never did transition year. I think it's a DOS year myself, but...
To go back to your point about you were saying you're under pressure to try and pick schools in Dublin.
Oh, I did personally feel that, Vanessa, she'd be brilliant in Mount Anville. Come on. And it was a very good friend of mine that actually knows me so well. Like, she was deliberately winding me up a small bit, And I'll push her down. They'd be delighted to have her. And there was a bit of that. And then there was the sort of the Gerards and it was quite intense. And I actually did feel I was being, I had no choice. I had to keep within this circuit. I personally did.
So the point I was making a minute ago was, like, we all went to our local school or our local secondary schools and all have gone on fine and got our qualifications and what have you, went to college and got what we got, whatever. We're coming over here with a daughter, and our big decision in trying to decide where to locate was about schools. So we got it, like, because there's a massive variation in the school quality in California. And again, it all depends on your location, and you can't go to school outside your assigned area unless you want to go to a private school which obviously costs a huge amount of money.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
So we had to try and pick somewhere to live, which meant that we were paying exorbitant rent because we're in a good school district.
Okay.
We're in a school district. So there's like each school here, there's this thing called great schools, and to give each school a rating out of 10. So if you go to a more affordable area, the schools are often rated as like 3 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 or 4 out of 10. Whereas in an area like where we're living, schools are rated 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. And it's simply down to resources because it's funded by the taxpayers in the district. So if it's not tax paid in an area, the school gets extra resources, and plus you tend to have kids that are coming from families who value education, and so there's a lot of parental involvement in the school, very very strong PTA and so on like that, and there's a whole, like, it's really segregation by income. There's no official segregation by race, but yeah, if you see the makeup of the school where our daughter goes,
yeah, but it's a bit like that
it's
here.
largely white, and
Yeah.
it's white or Asian. There's very few Hispanics.
So it's financial then. It's means, not diversity. Yeah. But I think you'll find that in Dublin. Kevin, which we all know you went to Clongowes.
No, I didn't go to Clongowes. But the point is that we're talking about two different things. We're talking initially about the competitive aspect, probably poisonous, but nobody has yet found an alternative. The other thing is the inherent inequality in education. And it's certainly not confined to California. But the inequality is more pronounced in heavy in urban areas with a higher density, not least in Dublin. The reason why perhaps the inequality is not so pronounced in rural areas, that you've had smaller schools in general, you've had very highly motivated teachers at first and secondary level who took pride in it, and who generally have made an enormous effort to ensure that their pupils and students can compete. But if you go, I spent quite a number of years working on behalf of children on the west side of Dublin and other sort of conurbations, where we're going into classes where, despite the best efforts of the teachers, people were losing the power of intelligible speech, and basic literacy and numeracy was becoming a challenge for them. Now that I'm not sure that's changed radically. These people who were left behind in our bloated imaginary miracle economy, and they still are. Cormac O'Grada 40 years ago, who was an economist in UCD, his view of it was that there was a merit bar, and he said that merit bar began at 5. And for hundreds of thousands of Irish children, that merit bar still exists. I've absolutely no doubt about that. Their disadvantage begins at the age of 5. And it is more pronounced in urban settings and city settings where, as I say, despite the efforts of teaching staff, the pressure upon them is intolerable.
I began my teaching career in Crumlin, where Vanessa is just across the road from where Vanessa is at the moment, where she lives, and a very disadvantaged school, classified disadvantaged. But Trinity actually introduced a great program called an access program, and there was a number of students who were brilliant, like absolutely fabulous kids. The school itself was a disadvantaged school. There was lots of issues with the school.
Do you know the school that you taught in there? I think Kevin might know this because he worked with the man for a while. But Fintan O'Toole, I think, might have gone to that school.
Well, Fintan came from Okavanna Road.
Yeah, but I think he went to Captain's Road, the school on
I think
Captain's
he
Road.
yeah.
Phil Linnet is one of the most famous students that went to the school. The Tin Lizzie, the guy from Tin Lizzie. He was actually in class with my uncle, would you believe? My uncle Joe was in the same class as Phil Linnet. And when I joined the school, I was talking to the principal, and I told him, I said my uncle was in class with Phil Linnet, and he didn't believe me. He said no, he wasn't, and I said he was. So he went into the office and he came out with this big dusty roll book, and he says, I'll show you. And he put it down on the table. The dust all blew up, and he opened it up and he goes down. How was his name? Joseph O'Donoghue. And he goes down through the list. And he goes, oh, geez, you were right. He was.
And the roller.
So that's why I started that school. Because,
but you know, on that road, Captain's Road, what you were talking about is what we call lower captains, and there's middle captains, and I'm sort of on the junction of lower and middle captains, and then there's upper captains. And along that road, and now we're not talking miles here, it wouldn't be a kilometre for the full length, but on Captain's Road, it's produced Phil Linnet, Robbie Keane, Morrissey is a relative of Robbie Keane, Fintan O'Toole. There's a whole string of people just came off that road.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You should see when we do stuff with the credit union here, we would do a lot of sponsor a lot of well, we try to anyway, you know, when they do anniversaries or, you know, the soccer, whether it's Manor Park or Crumlin United, and all the lads are coming from all over the world, you know, and decked out, and the stories, and they've all had, some people it's turned out brilliantly for, and for some people it hasn't turned out, and they just all come together, and it doesn't matter what way it ended up for them. It's like they were all back down here again. It's brilliant.
Yeah. I just finished the point I was making. With some brilliant students, really good kids, very bright, very capable, hard workers. But because of what was mentioned about the merit bar, because they had a disadvantaged start, they were never going to get the points needed for that would have got into Trinity through the CAO. But they did get into Trinity through the Access program, and they excelled in Trinity. Each of the students that I'm thinking of, they all excelled. They got through the degree because they were bright enough, they were hardworking enough, but they would never have got the points just through the CAO system. But as I say, so that was just my point I wanted to make.
Yeah, but you see, they come from homes as well where there wouldn't be an automatic diligence to go home and do the homework and then do the studying. They would be, you know, they would be in crowded bedrooms. They wouldn't have their own bedroom. There wouldn't be an area space to do the studying at night. And that sounds a bit condescending, I know, but I'm looking at my house where I am here, and I live in this. What? What was that?
Sounds a bit like my house growing up.
Yeah, but do you know, like I live in this community, and I could understand where there might have been a family of 6 or 7, and they're in one of the terraced houses there, and the dad is coming in, and the tradition of the dinner has to be on the table the moment the dad comes in the door, and everything has to stop. And I can understand that environment totally and completely. Yeah. But I do know, we've all known people like that when we all left school, like the post-primary school level, and then when we went into college or third level, or whether it was a trade, and where we all ended up, like in our 20s and early 30s, are completely different to what the people thought they were going to end up doing back when they were 13, 14 or 15. Like I distinctly remember people that I was at school with, you know, thinking they were going to be vets and dentists, and I remember bumping into girls and they were working in the Specsavers. Now that sounds awfully mockery, but you know, people were full of notions and pretension, and the teachers let them think that as well, because you know, they were, as you said, there was a form of elitism in that scene, you know. Yeah. But college and the professions are the trades, when they go out working for a living, it really sorts who's capable and who's not, more so than their school system does.
Yeah, well, I tell you, an awful lot of the people that Irish people I know over here have all went through the IT system, whether it's Sligo IT or Carlow IT or any other ITs, Tralee IT, whatever. That was where they got their education. That's where they got their degrees. And
so the points were very high for NIHE in my day. They were higher than
NIHE, sorry, the ITs. Just like I said, ITs, the Institute of Technologies, or the RTCs as it used to be before it became fancier. And like these people are excelling in their careers, you know. So
anyway, can I ask Lukey, what's go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, somebody was writing, an economist this week was writing about the fact that, you know, sort of Ireland, the article was about, you know, sort of Ireland using England as a sort of fallover for unemployment, and that in this case with the coronavirus, we don't have that, you know, in Ireland, that there is no way, you know, like no one can work everywhere when there's unemployment as a result of it. But they made an interesting point that a lot of the people that left would have been the poorer people, because the people from sort of, you know, richer families, there's a sort of like, it's almost like there's another internal sort of wealth system within the family that sort of allows people to stay at home even in lean times. But it's just interesting that sort of, I mean, it's kind of the same thing that happens with the Leaving Cert. If people don't have the means within their family as well to support them and encourage them, and a lot of time it's sort of, you know, the sort of the background of sort of education rather than actual sort of having money, that if that isn't there to support them, you know, it's you know, it is almost impossible to get through, to get over that bar.
Yeah, but you know what, the last crash after the Celtic Tiger, that sort of even things out a lot. And I think maybe after this, when we all get back to work here, there'll be another rebalancing, because you can see that network that you're talking about, Luke, that, you know, that have access to the opportunity to get the points and, you know, have a more comfortable college life, you know, that they don't have to have 2 or 3 jobs going and things like that, or they don't have to go to Jersey for the summer, or, well, I suppose those days are gone. There's no illegals going to America anymore. Not that I ever did. I think it's like what Leo would call the bank of mom and dad. That's getting smaller and smaller and more frazzled, but it's getting wealthier. Those that have survived that, their wealth is getting bigger, and the opportunity then is, you know, there is more access available now. I think anyway, there's more people recognize that there is opportunity available for them. In those schools, like you're talking about, the access problem, people can see there's results from that. And actually just across up the road, not even up the road, like literally over the fence from that school, Derek, you have St. Agnes's Primary School, where they have the music centre. And that's had several TV shows focused on it, about the parents now have started to learn music with the kids. And, you know, people see that, and they see opportunity, and they see the opportunity in learning, and they see it actually is up to the individual. It's not necessarily, okay, those that have access to the more enhanced learning opportunity, they just gain 4 or 5 years at the end of the day. It's okay, they get their start, they get to do the course they like at 18, 19 or 20. But at least there's nothing stopping you having a lash at it at 25, 26, 27.
There was an interesting article in the Guardian last year. They're talking about this area, and they were saying that there is actually a secondary benefit in terms of, you know, when you want to do a master's, you know, sort of you have the couple of quid to do that. And then after that, when you actually get into your job, I think they looked mainly at sort of jobs in media, and they were saying, you know, there was very clearly a sort of language, you know, within the establishment for how people dress. It's very subtle, the sort of jokes they make and all this sort of thing, and you're part of that set or you're not. And this is, you know, this is how people get the sort of you know, it's not a nod and a wink, it's just sort of, it's more that people sort of feel, well, I'm comfortable with this person because they speak my language, they make the jokes that I like, they wear the shoes that my father wears, whatever, all these sort of things.
Yeah.
These little social cues actually add up to quite an advantage when you try getting into the sort of higher level jobs in media in the UK. And it's actually it is a bit of a sort of I don't know if you call it glass ceiling, but it's a
Yeah,
ceiling.
but you know
I
what
just-
though? Sorry,
I just
Niamh,
want to. Sorry, I just wanted to move on to something else. But if you just want to have the closing comment on that, Vanessa.
No, I'm just saying that open access, like things like this, and kids with TikTok and internet, that's a great equalizer as well, you know. But I don't think sort of the distinctions between them and us, and that you would have seen in Ireland back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s is really as dominant today. I know they ham it up
That
now,
was-
and I just sent Neil that meme about what school did you go to, and the whole.
That was the great thing about growing up in the country, in the GA, because the GA field was a great equalizer as well. You put 15 guys on a field.
Yeah, they don't
And
do that
it-
up
it-
here. It's
It
rugby.
didn't matter whether you were a farmer,
Rugby and
whether you were
cricket.
unemployed, whether you were a
In
sister,
fairness,
a doctor.
Vanessa, they do. Like I
The
said,
schools really, the schools you and I know we're talking about here. It is rugby. It is cricket. And I remember I was telling you about my pal.
But what Derek is talking about, I think, is like sort of what they're doing outside of, they can still go down and join the GA club. And they do. I mean, like there'd be lads from, playing rugby and going to Blackrock College, but they'd still turn out playing Gaelic football and hurling for Cooley and Dalkey. And, I just, not that, like, I just thought there was always a great mix there. And that was very good for everyone because there's, there's people from, I kind of grew up with like a father from Glasstool and a mother from Glenageary. So I feel like I sort of had a foot in both camps and but that lovely mix of things and people, I think that gives great results. But a lot of time when people sort of get, oh, well, these are my type of people and they're more, it works both ways. It's the bad thing, but the good thing is when people sort of get to know each other a little bit and think, okay, well, realize everyone's the same.
Is Kevin gone there?
Just put him asleep talking about school again. We'd spend
Well, I
enough time
know,
with
but
each other without
you see,
talking
he
about
didn't
it for
want to
longer.
admit now the Clongrose Rockwell Belvo boy himself.
I wanted to talk about something else because we were ranting on about it the last few weeks, so it's not fair if we don't mention it this week, and that is the published plan and timeline.
Oh, the phase. Do you know that's my news story of the week, Derek, as well? And I know it's probably Neil's as well. Neil sent me a message, well, I think it was on Friday. There's no flying. We're not allowed to leave. We're not allowed to get a flight until after 2020. Did you know that? Here's Kevin back.
So we had, so that wasn't
So we
strictly
can't go
mentioned
to your
in the plan.
wedding, Luke.
Luke can't go to his wedding.
There is a wedding.
If there is a wedding.
If there is, oh Jesus, tell us. To mind that, here, let's tell us. Tell Vanessa what happened.
Well, the pandemic happened, I suppose.
Oh,
You
God.
see, you want the gossip, Vanessa. You see, sometimes it's the simple things like pandemics.
Try to be the big sister.
Yeah. Maybe the parents will just run off the circus or something. There probably aren't circuses around these days anymore, so
No, there
I don't know
is.
what
There
we'll
is.
do. Yeah, still doing the rounds.
Well, phase one, the big thing is the idea of not being able to do anything I want to do. And listen, I've had to resort to using a razor.
For what? For what? Skinning what? So we have a 5-phase plan, and it seems the New Zealand Prime Minister commented in her speech there yesterday, I believe, about us taking the slow road, which our government seemed to come to the defence of. But we do have a plan. What are people's? I'm going to ask you first, Kevin.
This is going to be good, lads. Pay
the comeback
attention.
king. Kevin, when you saw the government's published plan, what was your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, my first thought when I saw the plan was, where's the graphic? And then I saw the graphic and I thought, by Jesus, somebody's been paid a king's ransom to produce a load of codswallop. But now we have something to look at. And it's always refreshing to see, A, B, C, D. And I don't believe that any of the things they have said they wish to do are either advisable, practical, or indeed likely to have a beneficial effect. And I do think that what we are seeing at the moment is a bit of bean counting of how much damage can be shipped, how much political damage can be shipped, how much they can get away with. And I think it's a political decision. I don't think it's based on science, medicine, or the common good. And I think it's part of the process of bolting together some kind of makeshift government which can hold the hand of fear over us for the next few years. I'm sorry if that's not very positive, but that's just the way I see it.
I think that's the way we all are, because you said there about it not being political decisions. And I think the very appointment of the PR person being one of Leo's first appointments to help them, with the national pandemic emergency team rollout was actually PR.
Of course.
And that is literally to maximize their message and minimize opposition. Not about what was in your interest down there in Laois or my interest here or Luke's over in Portugal, so nobody gives a shite about him. The other fellas in America, so fuck them. So and poor old Neil is stuck there at Rathfarnham. Do you know what I mean? Like it was all about minimizing opposition and maximizing the message. As in Leo's in control. Harris knows what he's doing. COVID 1 to 18 was no problem to us.
But there's a question mark about integrity as well, because as expected, the Vinters flapped their wings at the whole lack of alignment with the restaurant and cafes, and within days the ink wasn't dry on the low resolution graphic on the plan. And there was comment about, well, if we have social distancing, the government did seem to take a softer approach. So, I mean, that brings into question the integrity of the whole thing. Plus, the hairdressers and the salons now have been on about measures, and I was quite surprised at the dates there. So, is it? I know there's an element of moving to it, but can we? How do people feel about the integrity of what has been published, given what we've seen in the media post then? And of course, sorry, the one last thing about the travel, because you did mention travel, because there was no reference to travel in it. But a couple of days later, Harris said that there was two articles I read on it, two sides. One referenced there would be he thought it would be very unlikely there would be any foreign travel in 2020. And then another newspaper quoted as unlikely as foreign summer holidays this year. So that hasn't quite been clarified. So when we can actually get on a plane.
Does he know?
He probably doesn't, which is fair enough. But I think we're going to see what'll happen there. I'd say will be driven by what other countries do. And I'd say which will be largely driven by the Mediterranean countries who rely on tourism, who are probably eager to get their houses in order and open their doors before one of their neighboring countries.
We rely on tourism as well to a large extent.
Yeah.
Not to the same extent, though, I don't think.
No, I mean, definitely not to what like Spain or Portugal or Rome.
I think Greece have a provisional date as to when they expect to open their doors, and that's probably, I'm only speculating, but I imagine that's going to put immense pressure on countries like Portugal, Spain, and Italy to have something in, because if the rest of us can fly, you're going to look at where is open, where can you travel to, and if it's Greece, that's where you'll go.
Well, I'm not going to Laois anyway, Kevin. I'm just letting you know that.
I did see a photo of. I did see a photo of like the terminal in the flight terminal in Seoul in Korea, and there was upstairs was international flights and downstairs was domestic, and the upstairs was empty but the downstairs was full, and they're all flying off to all corners of Korea, and they've got things moving again there. I think they're actually the football league in Korea is starting up on Friday, so it's it is doable, to sort of. Like they're I think baseball started on Wednesday. They've had less than 10 cases for 2 weeks in a row now.
I'm going to ask a quick question here. Sorry, Luke. Kevin, when was the last time you opened your front door?
Our front door was opened yesterday for some grocery deliveries, but it's opened on average about once a week for grocery deliveries to the front door.
And when was the last time you left the house, other than to open the gate for me? When was that? February?
Walked approximately 500 meters to a small convenience store, which is the only shop we have in the village. And I went wearing all the protective gear you can possibly imagine. And I had no human contact, and my only purpose was to put an envelope into the post box, which is on the side of the shop, and that was it. And I
So you were
walked
head
back.
to toe.
I was head to toe, and I did not meet a single human being going there or back.
But you see, this is one of the contradictions I have to this phase rollout as well. Is that, say, you look at where my mobile home, the caravan, right? I would be far better down there on my little patch on the East Coast, facing Cardiff on one side and a hill on the other side, than I am here in the inner city, literally meters away from everybody.
I'm with the reality of it.
Wouldn't Kevin be far safer down on my van than where he is now?
That if I get a droplet of this bug,
You're gone.
It will kill me. This is not a hypothesis. I am susceptible to a degree where mortality would be almost guaranteed. But can I just go back to the very core question that Neil said, integrity? I don't believe there is any integrity, has been any integrity in the process from day one. Approximately 50% or more of the victims of this virus have died in care settings. And that was not a question of their susceptibility to it or underlying conditions. That was a question of their environment. And their environment was disregarded and left out of any form of planning, both for the people working there and for the people in those settings. And in my view, that amounts to a degree of negligence which does not fall one jot short of manslaughter. And this is horrendous.
Yeah, we touched on that before, and I think I was able to give dates to it, Kevin, right? The first case was confirmed officially on the 29th of February. Okay. But that person presented themselves the week before, having come back from Italy, from the hot zone, and the HSC said he was grand. But it was the 4th of April before the package for the care homes was actually rolled out.
Well, it was
29th of February
announced
and the 4th of April. And their key appointment from the start of this was somebody involved in PR. Not a healthcare specialist or a contagious or infection control specialist, or a healthcare procurement specialist. It's just this whole slapstickness about it that just irks me. Like, you have the head of the HSE who's not a clinician, and he's ordering stuff off the internet. The HSE and all the voluntary hospitals, they're stocked with procurement specialists and clinical engineers that know exactly what they're looking for, what grade of stuff they're looking for, who to buy it, who the chain is, and all this. And there's your man ordering stuff off fucking the eBay.
You mentioned in passing my old mate Fenton a little while back. Essentially, in the past few days, he's published the incontrovertible fact that far from being a lack of planning, there was an actual plan in place. But when the thing hit, they abandoned it and threw it out the window. And it's been everything
in Ireland.
Yes.
You see, I'm not sure there was a plan.
Well, there was an actual, if you like, an emergency plan. There were protocols in place. They had some sort, to be fair, there had been a plan, but once the thing happened, they threw it out the window.
Like, was it like one of those historical plans that are like a policy the central bank make you have, and it goes up on the shelf?
It wasn't get underneath the kitchen table
Yeah.
and turn against the plaster, take your iodine tablets. It wasn't. It was relatively new, and it had been updated. And I think perhaps the latest, the format, as distinct from any additions that had been to it, I think the format of it dated from about 2014.
Well, I know from my days in healthcare, we definitely, and this was Mary Harney's time, we definitely had instructions and a strategy and a process and a protocol to introduce this, the whole infection control. And that's when everything became disposable. All the scalpels and the wear and everything, that it was all to do with infection control, and everything became disposable then. So that's when all that protocol rolled out.
I think Holohan was a Mary Harney.
Oh, he was definitely there when I was there. He definitely arrived around the time I was leaving, and he was considered to be like the bright young thing.
In the scheme, the first chief medical officer we've had was 1947, and in the great history of the role, I think Tony Holohan's been there nearly twice as long as anybody else. So in many ways, this was a cushy number and largely a sinecure for a very long time.
Well, for somebody so young to not go and try and make a name for himself as a consultant, that scene, like the people might not appreciate it, but it is a bit of it's a scene in its own right. Like, you know what I mean? Who gets master of what and who gets the consultant's post here? Like it's its own little talking shop as well. And
he also infamous trip to America where Harney sequestered the Air Corps jet for about 10 days, and they went to the Super Bowl.
Was he with her there?
Las Vegas and all the rest of it. Tony was.
Well, that's interesting now, because I know somebody else on that trip. I never said a word. Oh yeah, but come here to me. He is. He took that post very young. It wasn't like he was in his 50s and had done his 20 years at the full consultant's contract. He's gone in. I'm not. I probably.
As I say, it was.
I'm not far off, but I reckon Tony is about. He could easily be 10 years younger than me. He's 5, definitely. And he's in at least.
He's not old.
He's definitely under 50.
I don't think he practiced as a physician for more than certainly practiced as a physician for less than 10 years.
Kevin, can I just come back on a point there? I'd like to agree. I think what you mentioned earlier on about what's happened in the nursing homes is an absolute scandal. I think it's like if you have an elderly relative, a mother, father, or grandmother in a nursing home, they're there to be minded and taken care of and helped. And you'd imagine that should have been the most, like, alongside the hospitals, like the safest place for them. And that turns out that it's a death camp. In many ways. It's just absolutely frightening. And it probably shows the level of disregard we have for our elderly in Ireland, that we can ship them off to a nursing home and leave them there. And it makes you wonder, like, about the management of nursing homes. It makes you wonder about the level of care that people get in nursing homes, that infections can spread so fast. And I think, like, this is the type of scandal that's up there with the sort of scandals we've had in the past.
Absolutely.
In terms of residential care and so on. Like, it's frightening. And for people to sort of dismiss it as say, like, oh, they were old or they had underlying causes, it's just, I don't understand that mentality at all. Like, life is life, and like, every one of those people is somebody's father, somebody's mother, somebody's granny. They have family, they have friends, that they have a personality, and for us just to dismiss and I think your point is very, very strong, and I just wanted to back you up on it, that it's like, to allow it to happen is just it's mind-boggling. And like, it needs to be investigated. There needs to be an
Well,
inquiry as to how this happened.
do you know Tiggy Daly, the head of the nursing home? He's a pal of mine, a very good friend of mine. So I'd be afraid to bring him on the show. He would just go. He'd be like,
I don't know, but the number of deaths that are there are.
Yeah,
somebody has to answer for it.
We haven't heard the end of the fallout, as in, and I hate to put people's lives into like something so so simple as a fallout, but the outcome of how the pandemic has been managed, we will be 10 years getting to the sort of the final bill, and I again, that sounds a bit crass, but Kevin, you know.
Yes,
I
you
don't
will
mean it
get
that
to a
way.
final bill.
We haven't got to the end
truth.
of this, and yeah, but you see, like we've always been used to kind of pandemics in a way, in a sort of in a hospital environment. You always had a bug in, you always had something in, you'd have to close down. And I remember one time in one of the hospitals, I used to say I couldn't go past the porter's desk without getting lice, like, you know, or I got the winter vomiting bug, and I'm not kidding you, like the walls of my office were just splattered, you know. And it's just the way it was managed, because today now it's been confirmed, and I posted it on Broadsheet about somewhere, I don't know which thread, but it's confirmed now that they actually did know in January, before the election, that this was a bit more than something. And there's kind of an inclination now of admitting that it was here by then. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I'm a blackguard, so I can understand a bit of sort of admin and political and sort of financial blackguarding, but the whole deep state stuff now wouldn't be me at all. I wouldn't have the patience for it anyway. But like, I absolutely still believe that this could well be the reason Leo did a runner to the Rs to call an election without even telling his own party. Like, and if anyone thinks that's outrageous, think again, because Fine Gael didn't even have half their candidates selected, and neither did Fianna Fáil when Leo went to the Rs. So
can I tell you something incidental to that? It may be just, I think he did reach a tipping point. Yeah, I think he went on a Tuesday to the Rs, wasn't it?
Saturday. He went to it was a Saturday, and half the constituencies didn't even know, his own constituencies.
Well, anyway, the Dáil was supposed to reconvene on a Tuesday. There was an Oireachtas committee meeting, the notional Children and Youth Affairs Oireachtas committee was to meet on the Wednesday.
Oh, your friend, Minister
Support. I know this because I was to appear before it. And I know this because I had to put in a written submission of the presentation and the statement I was going to make on the Wednesday. And it was going to be, in fact, chaired by the lovely Alan Farrell. But in fact, the submission I was making was, in fact, that the matter before them, they could not constitutionally discuss. And it was the fact that they're trying to introduce new legislation to exhume Tune without an inquest. That was the nub of it. So essentially, the statement that we had put in was in fact a direct challenge to the sitting of the committee itself. So that was another thing that just went out the window, and the projected legislation falls at the same time.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think it was a tipping point reached where they were doing it, ran to the country, because there was so much shit coming down the line. And I've no doubt that I'm quite prepared to believe that the existence of this was something which they knew about.
Well, you see, Kevin, I sat at the table certainly, look, I'm not going to say I sit at the table now at the upper echelons of the Department of Health, but those that do, I have worked with them, and I know I'm not unfamiliar with how they think or how they come to decisions, because at the senior level civil service, even in health, they don't care whether they get it wrong or not, because they're 2 or 3 years, they're moving to the next job or the next job or the next job. And we've talked about this circle of friends where they go on and on and on. Nobody takes responsibility. Nobody, you could have a strategy to build the greatest children's hospital in the world, but you'll have changed 5 or 6 CEOs before it even gets out of the ground, you know, because there's nobody there to actually own the story from start to finish.
Well, I'm a great fan of the Che Guevara strategy in building a primary healthcare system. As most people know, Cuba still enjoys probably the best primary system in the world. Well, his method of persuading the medical profession and society as a whole.
But he was a doctor himself, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. But I think he casually dropped the term
doctor.
Cold grey wall at dawn, sort of, or firing squad into the conversation, and it sort of concentrated people's minds.
But you know, it wouldn't surprise me if in the Department of Health, definitely, that they have like an update of pandemics and sort of contagious diseases every morning, or a bulletin all the time, and they actually have a plan written somewhere between a group of career-long public servants and bureaucrats. It absolutely wouldn't surprise me. No. So when this thing triggered, they knew what was coming down the line. I really do believe, listen, prove me wrong, Leo, absolutely, but I don't believe you went into this election thinking you knew what you were doing, because you had a howler.
I was home in Ireland over Christmas, and Neil can probably tell you that I'm a good man to socialise when I get the chance. And I'll be first there, last to leave. And
you're in good company, Derek.
Well, thank you. Well, others decide that. But I like to go out, and I like to party, and I like to meet friends, and I like to socialise. But New Year's Eve, I was absolutely wiped, and I missed the New Year's Eve celebrations. I was in bed all day. I couldn't get up. I tried to get up at 6 o'clock. To try and make an effort to get ready to go with my friends, and I couldn't. That has never happened to me before.
And it could be age as well now, Derek.
Well, I turned 44 on Tuesday, right?
Oh,
so it's my birthday. So, what you call it? But I wouldn't do it. I never felt anything like it, and it's only now thinking back, I'm going, like, that was a weird thing to hit me over Christmas, and I'm wondering, could it have been? Maybe what I genuinely never felt as wiped as I felt on that day. I would not have missed New Year's Eve celebrations, you know. And I
don't know. Maybe you brought it in. Maybe it should be the San Francisco virus.
Maybe it's the Derek virus.
What I saw, that's a totally different thing, Neil. When I saw today that they said that they reckon that it could have been in Ireland like as early as December, it did make me wonder, was that something that I had?
Well, I knew, I don't know, Kevin can confirm this, but I remember I'd swing by Kevin on a Sunday night on my way back from Cork, and I remember very early on, I don't know whether it was December or just January, Kevin, but would I be at the door and I'd be saying, I've washed my hands, I've cleaned my nose or something, because, you know, Kevin goes everywhere with an inhaler, by the way. It's in his hand when he leaves the front door. Like, he's nothing short of pulling a little wheelie thing behind him, you know, a ventilator or something, or an iron lung. And I remember that being January even.
Yeah.
Before even the election, because you and I would have been up to Lawler. Oh, actually, it would have been before the election, because you and I had to chat about something that we're not going to discuss here.
No.
So it was well before the election was called. So I would naturally have been cautious before I called into
We're
Kevin's.
actually sitting up till a very late hour, positing the date on which it would be called.
Yeah. And so it had to have been, and he didn't call it till the second week in January because it was the 8th of February. Oh, Leo, you're absolutely fucked out, boy.
But the other thing is, apart from the fact that the obvious thing in Neil's provocative question about the integrity is that we all, of course, place our trust in the government and we believe every word they say and we feel very safe in their hands. Is that about it, Neil?
Well, I'm just thinking now. Let's talk about
Are you
support
asking me or are you
instead.
telling me?
Well, I was giving you a sort of an opportunity to express your view and your great
I
love.
think
I think I'd
well,
elect the Muppet Show first now. I think I prefer Kermit and Miss Piggy and Scooter and Animal. And at this point, do you know what, lads? I do a better job myself, and that's saying something.
I think Kevin, you know, I feel we're at a we've been edging towards this this cliff edge of where we'd see a segregation of Irish society. You know, there's obviously a frustration amongst people who want to go back to work, and you know, to yourself and Derek's point about a life as a life, and you know the impact of the care homes. But there is a portion of people who aren't directly affected by that, who are saying, you know, we want to get back to work, isolate the people who need to be isolated. And obviously it's not as simple as that. But another thing that I'm seeing emerge, I mean, this all kind of started weeks ago with the Broadsheet posted some pictures of Irish Town, and there was a sign up saying no joggers on this path, it's too small, 2 meters, blah, blah, blah. And that's crept up now to, you know, and then it was photographs of people out in the park not breaking the law, socially distancing, but people out walking and stuff like that. And we're at a point where I think the next wave now is because of the childcare situation and the lack of childcare facilities for non-essential workers.
Made for you now. He's put his hand out to you there now. You put his hand
Hang
is
on
out
now,
to you
hang
there
on.
now,
Hang
Kevin.
on. So you know, so there's, I don't want to say a discrimination or whatever you call it, I don't know what the word is, but essentially, anecdotally, I'm hearing from people who have kids who are struggling working from home and juggling kids. I know anecdotally of one person who lost a contract because they had kids in the background. I know someone else who's struggling to get interviews scheduled because they've no one to mind their kids. And that's fair enough. But as the summer progresses and people are going back to work, the childcare situation isn't changing. You know, this people will still have to mind their kids and will have to stay at home. So I think that's the next thing. You're going to get potentially a percentage of that population who will be angry, will be frustrated. And really what I feel at the moment is the COVID payment is probably keeping this all from bubbling over, because it's, you know, it's hard on social welfare. You know, it is being extended and it'll probably be kicked down the road until the next government comes in and has to make a call on it. But personally, I think that we're, you know, the more this goes on, the more that people are able to air their views on the economy and all the rest. The most vulnerable in society are one part of it that are going to be, again, I don't know the next best word to use, but discriminate against. You know, there are percentage that will say isolate them, leave them be, and let the rest of us get on with our lives, which obviously isn't a fair reflection. But that's where I think it goes, and that's why the integrity thing is quite important. You know, and I know that the childcare is a burning issue, but you can't publish. I personally don't. You publish the plan, whether you agree with it or not is one thing. But then if a couple of days later, you know, the publicans like, hang on a second, lads, and then the government saying, well, you know, we can. I know I'm tongue in cheek slightly with that, but they are saying, you know, maybe if you can put the measures in place, we can open sooner. It just feels like it undermining the integrity of what they're trying to achieve and what we're doing, and it's just frustrating us more.
There's a big push over here to try and get things open up, as you all know. You guys are.
So you never closed, Derek.
Well, we did, because we were in the Bay Area, right? So California is supposed to go into phase 2 on Friday, but the 6 counties of the Bay Area are staying in their shelter in place. So even though the governor has announced that California is going to phase 2, the Bay Area isn't. We were the first ones to close down here, and we're still in shelter in place, even after the state has opened up. Now, interestingly, the golf courses have opened up this week.
Oh, how'd you get on?
That gave me a great little, like.
Did you poke a ball?
it gave me a great little boost. I was excited about that, but I haven't went yet because I'm conscious. I'm conscious of other people.
Yeah, but that's what we were talking about. Kevin, you might appreciate this, and Luke was talking about. You know, I'm very skeptical now at this point. I'm not going the conspiracy theory Bill Gates is trying to control our body stuff yet, right? But I realize that other people are scared, and I don't want to be reckless in case I put the shits up Kevin, and that would make me a bully, I think. And so I'm trying to be as observant as I can without going.
At this point in my life, there isn't much going to put the shits up me. But I come back.
But you know what I mean.
Neil
You know what I
said
mean.
about
Like,
it.
and I'm in a community that's high density as well. And
Oh, you are, yeah.
and
I'm very lucky. And as you know, I can walk up my back door and I'm surrounded by stone walls.
You're very lucky. You are in a unique environment, but at the same time, it's very isolated. And then you put somebody who has lived around here all their lives in your environment, and they'd fucking go bananas. Do you know what I mean? They'd be used to hanging out the window and having the chat.
Can I just come back to what Neil has said, because he raised the point and it's incredibly important.
Yeah.
He talked about the integrity of this process from beginning and now the change in emphasis in this process. And the competing wishes of people who are frustrated and whose lives have been turned upside down by it, and who, unlike me, have got most of their lives ahead of them and that of their children and their careers and their well-being, and the fact that they can go out and play a round of golf, whereas I wouldn't get up past the first fairway without needing an oxygen tent. But the word integrity is key. And I do not believe there is any true integrity in what they're doing. I believe it is a political bean counting exercise. In other words, I do not believe these people are acting in good faith. I believe that they're attempting to calculate how many dead we can afford to take the political and economic pressure of those whom they believe they can persuade to keep them in office. Kevin, and I do believe it's as bad as that.
I actually don't even believe it's as deep as that, Kevin. I think it's just whatever gets them to the end of the day. I really don't think they've even thought that far ahead as to the body, as to deaths or to impact or to sort of the wider society. I actually don't believe they've thought that far ahead. I think they just think as far, like if you look at it from an Owen Murphy or a Simon Harris point of view, they just want to get to the end of the interview. They don't give a shit what they're saying, as long as they get out of the interview with a nice tweet at the end of it.
Well, I don't know. Sorry?
The point about integrity, it's a really, really interesting question. And are you framing the question in terms of the Irish government, or are you framing it like throughout the world? Because certainly here as well, certainly in the United States, you have to question the integrity of what's going on. Trump is claiming victory because there isn't going to be 2 million deaths. He's saying if it's 70, 80, 90,000, then it's a success. And like he's talking about dismantling his task force that he has appointed to do it. So, and again, there's the political pressure to get the economy going. And again, I understand that completely. So I'm wondering, like, when you're talking about the Irish government's integrity, and then I'm seeing the same thing here, and then you compare it to what's happening in Britain, and then Germany are doing something different altogether. I suppose all the governments have like their political realities, their economic realities. And I suppose the question could be asked across every government, across the whole world. And then I suppose you can go, well, let's give them a grade. Let's give them a grade on their integrity. Like, do we think that The Irish government are doing a better job than the British government. How does the Irish government compare to the Germans? How does the Irish government compare to the Spanish or the Portuguese?
I'm afraid to ask that question because
I certainly think they've more integrity than Trump, right? I think they've more integrity than what's going on here. Like there's some states aren't even they're not even counting statistics anymore. So, but that's not me giving the government a pass, because obviously, as Neil says, if they're able to just come out with this Tahoe plan, and then the very next day adjust it for publicans, and then adjust it for greyhounds or whatever. I mean, there is a valid question about integrity, but I'm just trying to balance it off with other governments. Which government has the most integrity? Which is the gold standard that we should be sort of going? That's the standard we should be meeting.
I'm worried there. I'm hearing the word integrity a lot, but what I'm actually kind of measuring it against is actually the fairness of it. Our own phasing out. I really don't think it's integrity at all. I think there's an element of unfairness about some of it as well. I don't think they've thought it out, and there's some stuff. And one of the reasons why I immediately thought of bringing Kevin on tonight, because it's a person he knows quite a lot about is what the creches. You asked about what was the story of the week. I suppose for me it was the flights thing. I think, Jesus, I can't go over to see Stephen now in Barcelona at Christmas for his big gig, and that's from a personal point of view, but from it relies, and I posted during the week about the creches not opening up is a huge problem for this economy, and a significant problem. And as a working parent, like if you don't have access to a creche, you're screwed, because everyone thought about the nanny and granda minded kids. The bank of mom and dad and nanny and granda being the childminders, those days are gone. So our good friend, the former, currently acting minister, but former TD, Catherine Sapone, this is her remit, and she gave back 60 million of her budget to the Exchequer, when they could have kept some creches opening with a smaller ratio, childminder to child capacity. It could have floated all this for a year and keep essential workers working, get people back to work, without now juggling, trying to figure out childcare. Because I can tell you, somebody who goes back to work while you're still breastfeeding, your biggest thing is, it's not trying to squeeze into your work suit, it's childcare. Your entire life revolves around childcare for a huge number of years. The fact that it's in the hands of somebody who is actually being found out more. Now, Kevin has studied Catherine Sapone far more intimately than anybody, far more than any journalist or any sort of government whip that brought her in.
I'm not sure I like to vote intimately in terms of Catherine Sapone.
No, well, do you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about sort of professionally, not biblically, Kevin. But I think now that she's in the spotlight on that little podium on her own, she's far more exposed to being more useless than useless. Like, this person was a minister, and we're not talking like a junior minister of a state here, kind of going around inspecting greyhound stadiums. We're talking somebody who had TUSLA in their remit.
Yes, I know.
Our relationship with Catherine Sapone is very different through the Tuam Survivors Network. So we test her on a different metric altogether. But for the everyday person, for this person now to be responsible for creches in Ireland, to try and get them open, if Leo's really sincere, you're talking about integrity, Derek. If Leo and Simon Harris and Simon Coveney and if they're really serious about this phase out, they'd have her back wherever it is, back to Canada, wherever she's from, and bring in and hire in somebody who's not a PR expert, but somebody who can actually manage TUSLA. while this is going on. Because I remember at the very start of this, people need to remember that even though the schools are closed, for an awful lot of children, and even around here, school is their safe place. That's where they get their 2 or 3 hot meals a day. Because I'm very involved in the breakfast clubs here in Crumlin Village, in St. Agnes's, and like, that's their safe place. And this is the person who's in charge of this, when we shouldn't have to check. And integrity means that I do not need to know that person is doing their job. I don't need to check on it. I need to know that they're doing it and they're responsible, and they don't need supervision. They can be trusted no matter what. They don't need the likes of PwC and KPMG to check are they doing their job.
I was just answering Neil's question on integrity, and
Yeah.
it was Neil. It was Neil that raised the point about integrity, and I was just saying, because the focus was on the Irish government and their integrity, and I was just trying to draw a comparison between what the Irish government were doing and what.
Well, you were comparing it with Trump. I get
Trump,
that.
Yeah. So the point I was making was, no, that doesn't mean I'm not giving the Irish government a pass on their integrity. They could be as big as shambles, could be the worst thing ever, it could be worse than Trump. I was just trying to make the comparison. Okay, like, I would like to think, right, that everybody's trying to do their best. Now, that's not good enough when you're in positions of authority and when life and death matters. Doing your best is not good enough. But I would like to think that everybody is doing their best. Now, that might be naive. That may be naive. And you might say to me, how can you draw up a plan and then a day later undo the plan for the pubs? How is that? Like, how there's no integrity in that? Like, I take
there's no consistency, but that's Irish way. There's no consistency because, like, you even see it in the courts. What happens in a district court in, say, Athy will be very different to what the judge in a district court in Mallow will do. That's consistency. Yeah. What we need now is we need to know that the people that are currently acting as responsible are actually covering our asses, and that's not happening. So, I mean, whether they're doing their best, and even that's not good enough, get them. The idea of having an emergency team, a national pandemic emergency team, means you put these things into place. You back it up with this. You back it up with the extra help. If that means bringing in a PR person, well, fine, prove it to me. Yeah. But at the moment, Catherine Sapone is absolutely 100% failed. Simon Harris has proved that 100% failed. So a national pandemic emergency team has an unlimited budget. Go and sort it.
I think the best
money is not the issue here.
No, absolutely.
It's not the problem.
I think the best PR is competence.
Exactly.
If people were doing their job on a competent basis, well, then the PR would speak for itself. But if you're trying to get a PR person to spin
I tell you something,
into a silk purse, then you're on a losing battle.
We're hearing about Trump. We're hearing about Trump. We're hearing about Boris. We're hearing about our own crowd. And we're hearing how brilliant the lady in New Zealand is, and how we're hearing how all the women are performing brilliantly. Merkel, our friend in New Zealand, just saying. I don't know what's happening in Portugal there, Luke. Are you all tested? Are you all safe?
Well, I think they're doing a little bit better than Ireland. I saw an article in the Irish Times this week, praising their response to it. They seem to have done, a few things well. I think generally Portuguese people are, cautious. They're sort of, mature in how they operate. They're, unlike those feckless Spaniards, they're, sort of that little bit more thoughtful in their behavior. And I think that's paying dividends. They are, they really are a sort of together. Sometimes a little bit reserved, and they wonder whether they're too reserved. But when something like this comes along, they're serious people, and they've done a great job on suppressing. I think they've had about as many cases here as Ireland, but with twice the population. That's pretty much it. And considering that, I mean, they have so much tourism and so much travel from Spain, France, and Italy into here. They did a very good job of keeping things quiet. But they did actually this week, change things here. I mean, we've started actually opening up. So since Monday, small shops have opened, barbers have opened up, hairdressers. I've no excuse. I'm like Derek with the golf. I could have actually gone out this week.
Yeah, but you'll always look like that, don't you?
Yeah. And restaurants are opening. Restaurants, cafes are opening up.
Oh, I can't wait
in 10
to go
days
to a
time.
restaurant.
10 days time at 50% capacity. So that's really fantastic to think that that's on the way. And
Well, what's the temperature like there now?
Oh, don't upset me.
It's nice. I mean, generally it's about like 7 or 8 degrees warmer than Ireland. So I think like today it was 22. So
can I just say, I will never, Kevin, I promise you, I will never complain about the Tullamore Court Hotel again. And the dinner dances and the bar and the groping and the dirty fellas looking for a dance. Oh Lord, I'm sorry. I
Can I encourage people to do one thing? Just do one thing. Because I think it's incredibly important. If you have a vote in Ireland, register for a postal vote now. Because I've absolutely no doubt that we are going to have another general election within the foreseeable future. And it's going to be logistically difficult. But if you simply, with 2 taps on a keyboard, put an asterisk beside the name of every person on the electoral roll, you can issue a postal vote, and it can be picked up by the postal service in the same way that they deliver mail. It can go to counting centres. There is no rule under the electoral law that all votes have to be cast on the same day. In fact, the electoral law allows for votes to be cast in different places on different days, just like the offshore islands on the West Coast are. I have absolutely no doubt we're going to have a general election, and I would urge everybody to register for a postal vote. Now, the current criteria are a bit watery, but where there is an uncertain situation about the duration of government, where there is a present and real threat to health, there is no way, and this is not a governmental decision. Government decides when an election is held, generally, but it is your local county or city registrar who is in charge of the electoral roll for each of the constituencies, with the exception of say, Dublin, where the county registrar would control all the constituencies for the city, and Cork likewise. But absolutely register for a postal vote, because I do believe you're going to need it.
I will do that as soon as I finish this conversation. I'm going to do that.
Good.
Vote early and often. What constituency do you vote in there, Derek? Just
County Meath.
County Meath?
County Meath, yeah.
You get to vote for Regina again.
we live in Dunboyne. Dunboyne, County Meath.
You have to vote for Regina and Patrick.
No, that's not Regina.
David English. Jesus Christ. Where did I go wrong, lads?
Vanessa, just to wrap it all up for us tonight, you've got a picture on the wall that's been I don't know. We probably can't see well, but I can share
that picture. Lads,
I'm going to share a screen here, and I'll give people a look at. I'm sure everyone has seen it now.
Oh,
yeah. Does anyone know who that is?
Do you know who that is?
I do.
Go on.
Adele.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So go on, Vanessa.
Well, he knows who he is. Somebody obviously reads the Hollywood Reporter, because that was her Instagram.
It was in the Irish Times.
Was it?
Yesterday.
I don't.
In fact, the article in the Irish Times, I was quite surprised, because there was a little bit of body shaming going on.
Well, look let me just say something about that. you know, the girl has lost weight. There's no doubt about that, right? And how she did it is her business. I don't care. And whether it was planned or not, that's her business, right? But it's a huge change, okay? And I understand one picture is from an Instagram for her 32nd birthday. But the reason why I put it up was, Adele, if you're watching, if this dress obviously won't fit you anymore. This was the dress you wore and when you did the Graham Norton, the one-to-one with Graham Norton, like Unplugged with Graham Norton. Can you see that, no? The green dress? No. Ah, for God's sake. Look, you're not going to be wearing that dress anymore, but you know what? It'll fit me because my curves definitely need flattening.
I once got into trouble in the corridor.
It's green with gold, Adele. It's the dress you wore for the Graham Norton one-to-one on BBC. So, do you know what? You've no use for it anymore, girl. And if you're happy with your weight loss, that's your business, and I'm delighted for you. You're 20 years younger than me, so listen, my days are behind me. So if that frock is no more good to you,
she wants it, yeah.
Do you know what? So I'd look after for you.
I once got into trouble in the corridors of Dáil Éireann, and by saying something I should never have done. I was walking down the corridor, and towards me I saw a vision coming in a particularly florid and expansive dress.
Oh God! Was this?
And it was Minister
Norton with the scarf.
Then Minister Mary Mitchell O'Connor.
Oh no!
And I'm afraid I took advantage. And my companion gave me a clip around the ear. I stopped in front of her and said, "Ooh, I'm sorry, we don't have your sheep." Never mind.
See,
Mary
Mitchell part. No, hang on, no, Nina wants to go off and get a can out of the fridge, right? Like the Mary Mitchell O'Connor, you know, is another example where I have to say, where the fuck did I go wrong, lads? Like, I'm in the wrong game altogether. Jesus, when I look at this, I'm telling you, lads, I am changing my life. Get me that green frock, lads, and I'm running for election.
On that note, very, very quickly from everyone, what's your expectations news-wise for the next week? We'll start with you, Kevin.
Well, I must admit that I don't think I'm going to get a night's sleep until I hear the judgment of Mr. Justice Charles Meenan, because I know it's going to keep me restless and my anxiety level is very high. But I can honestly say that I await with bated breath and every other thing in my fiber of my being, expectation raised to hear the wisdom which the judge will deliver in his judgment in the matter of O'Doherty and others versus the Minister for Health and others.
You know, I bumped into them yesterday. Down, I had to go in. I was in another court and, oh, God, I felt like wearing a woolly hat and a scarf and just trying to get in, you know, because the other gates are closed now. You're only allowed in one gate. Jesus. Anyway.
Vanessa, what's your predictions for
my prediction is we'll have a brand new meme. The sourdough's gone. And actually, one of my sourdough jars.
Meme. It's not a meme.
It's spelled me, by the way. It's actually spelled me. And one of my starter jars is cracked. But I'm expecting the whole new thing now. I'm thinking masks will be the thing for the next week. The people will be coming up with new. I know there's been for the last like 10 weeks is how to make a mask out of a pair of knickers and a pair of socks and a t-shirt, and the sheet today had like all these kind of big knitted ones. Actually, Luke, I'm expecting you to have a big knitted hairy one now, you know. But I think it's going to be
and
masks.
A mask as well.
I think masks are going to be the thing, and I'm going to. Stephen was on the show with us last week, Kevin, and Stephen does this thing every morning where he drinks like turmeric, black pepper, and eats like a half dozen cloves of garlic. It's part of his routine, and he says it has him. He's ironclad. So I'm thinking I might try and do a recipe with turmeric.
Turmeric and
biscuits for
ginger.
you guys.
I often have a drink of that, and it's pretty good. Turmeric, ginger, and ginseng is very popular in Korea. I hear.
Wow.
Little bird told me.
Well, I just want to know the wedding is going ahead at some point now, Luke.
It'll have to. It has to happen.
We're in love.
You know, that's what they say. It's just like in economics, they say if something has to happen, ultimately it will happen.
Okay.
Like that.
But don't let it happen unless we're there now, because you have to give me a day out now.
I
We'll
won't let her marry me on the sly. I'll say no, wait.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah,
give us a
it'll be
day
live
out.
streamed.
And like there's Kevin as well. Like Kevin has a suit there that he's been dying to get taken off. I don't know for how long he's. Neil's going to kill me now tomorrow. He was like, "You did all the talking. We didn't get to the movies. Can I give you a movie tip, by the way?
No, you've had your turn. We'll save that for next week.
Marky Mark, Spencer Confidential, great crack.
Luke, what's your predictions for the next week?
I think it'll be more the same. I think things will ease off. You know, I think I actually think that you know, now that on the COVID side, I know it's, you know, it's the big news, but I think that we're starting to see. We couldn't see the end, you know, up until now, but we're starting to see like New Zealand, Korea, a few other places, Norway are starting to sort of open up a little bit, and we're seeing that like ICUs in Europe aren't going to be overloaded, you know, and all this sort of stuff. So there's very positive things happening, and I think that will become more clear. Everyone apart from the UK and the US, it seems, is going the right direction.
Derek, thanks, Luke. Derek, over. I think you'll probably be live streaming from the local bar next week, having your
golf
chicken
course.
wings.
Well, if I am,
the clubhouse.
I'll definitely show you around. I'm sort of really interested to see what's going to happen with the Premier League in the UK. Looking at, I was very heartened to hear Luke saying South Korea is back playing football. I know Germany's back playing football. And I just wanted to see Liverpool getting that trophy.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That's it now. Knock it off. You wouldn't let me talk about Bombshell the movie, but you're letting him talk about Liverpool. Here. This is blackguarding altogether. You see, actually, Derek, you know you have a buddy. You know you have a Liverpool We'll Never Walk Alone buddy there with you.
Heard me.
Mr. Higgins there. Come on, I tell you what, sing us out.
Come here. When we were talking earlier on, did I see you making a choking gesture at me at one stage when I was trying to speak?
Me?
Yeah, well, possibly so.
Yeah, I saw this like choking gesture when I was trying to speak.
Do you know what? Do you know that TV show?
I was lifted over the turnstiles at Anfield when I was 8 and 9 years old, with my little legs kicking in the air. I had an uncle who would lift me over the stile, and above the grill window where the cashier could see or could not see me. And in general, I would then go onto the cop, but I would be handed down like many other kids, on shoulders and hands, right down to the very, very front. It may have seemed like a death trap at the time, but we all survived.
Well, listen.
Yeah.
On that note,
can I just talk about can you give me 30 seconds there? Do you know we were talking about stop it. You know, it occurred to me about you know, we were talking about what everyone's watching, and you know, people are kind of watching what's on Netflix, and you know, sort of the thing that kicked off last week about what's on RT about the pornography or whatever the shag it was, the TV show. And what struck me about Derek went back to watch the original Cheers, and it occurred to me then there were some great shows from that time that were actually scripted. There was no Love Island or Big Brother, or these were actually scripted shows with actual writers, you know, and brilliant writers. So I'm kind of putting a challenge out there to all the millennials and whoever, is to go back and look at some of these shows. There's Cheers. Taxi was the funniest thing. you will be.
Danny DeVito.
Yeah. And do you remember the bit when he's trying to get into the bed with Mary Lou Henner? Like, I mean, you'll be rolling around. I promise you, you'll be rolling around laughing.
I've heard a horrible rumor that he has been that since.
Oh, don't tell me he's got the virus now.
No. That since Bruce, what's his name? Who is Bruce married to? Somebody.
Bruce Forsyth.
Action Man.
Demi Moore. No.
Bruce who?
Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis. Yeah, Bruce Willie. Yeah. As age has overtaken him, he's discovered the blue pill. So he's coming back to make the finale.
Oh, with Cheers.
No.
What was her name in Cheers there? Ray Perlman.
Yeah, it's called Die with a Heart On.
Ah, Jesus, tonight.
There you go. That's the only reason Kevin was on the show tonight, just to get that joke in there. Just very, very quickly, if you are a fan of Cheers or you want to nostalgize over it, Conan O'Brien is an excellent podcast. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, a different guest every week, and Ted Danson is the latest guest. It's very, very interesting as he talks about his career, and I don't think I've ever listened to a podcast or an interview with somebody and they just seem like a genuinely nice, down to earth human being. So Ted Danson, it's very interesting, his career, and he talks about Cheers. Worth to listen.
Yeah.
Well, I would just recommend these shows from the 70s, and one in particular that changed television. And it's definitely got probably the greatest characters that have been repeated and mirrored in shows you see today is the Mary Tyler Moore Show. You'll find the character Ted Baxter and even Mary Tyler Moore herself. And Lou Grant, lads,
yeah.
go for it, and you'll see what TV and real writing was about then. And the Muppets. Go to the Muppets from the 70s.
On that note,
stay safe.
And stay safe. Here he is. Listen, he'll have me going in there. He'll have me going down to him now in a wetsuit. And I'll have the big frogman pace.
On that note, big thanks to our panelists tonight. Shout out to our man in Laois, Mr. Kevin Higgins. Thank you, Kevin. Our man in Porto, Luke Brennan. Our lady in Crumlin, Vanessa Foreman. Known as the Beverly Hills of Dublin. Our man in Silicon Valley. I'm
getting a boob job as soon as I'm out of this, the surge. And actually, there was a question in the chat, but about all the things coming down. I actually, JDF Reality, I actually do think there's going to be a surge of other things like hip replacements and, stents for hearts and stuff like that. The standard vascular surgeries. They're all going to be just totally, the waiting lists are going to quadruple in the next 12 months. Anyway, sorry. And I'm getting a boob job done on the private.
Thanks for tuning in. And shout out to JDF Reality, who's been busy chatting with us in the chat pit on YouTube. We're here most Thursdays. I was going to say Tuesdays. We're here most Thursdays. John Ryan is taking a leaf out of Spitting Image from the 80s. The President's Brain is missing. So if you spot John Ryan, he is going to come back. He says he is coming back. Email the site. Tweet about it on Twitter. We've got to find this man and see where he is and get him back on the air.
Well, his hair will be the same as Luke's and Kevin's anyway.
I'm saying
it'll fit right in.
I'd say John, has the most immaculate haircut. I'd say if anyone has perfect hair during the pandemic, it's not Vanessa. Question mark over how Vanessa has the perfect hair.
Is that right, Kevin? Is that right?
Meanwhile, us men here struggling. Look at Derek. He's like an extra from a Bon Jovi or a Michael Bolton music video.
Back to the 80s. Is that what you're saying?
My hair always looks the same. It's the colour's the problem.
So thanks for tuning in. We'll be back again soon. Mind yourselves, don't go outdoors, and
see you guys.
Make sourdough. Bye.
Bye, everybody.